Welcome. I'm extremely happy to be here with you. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you so much. I look forward to sharing with you insights and inspirations of a lifetime. Dr. Arnold Nerenberg, been a clinical psychologist for 45 years and walked upon this earth for over 75 years. The title of today's lecture is The Philosophy of Objectivism and the Psychology of Honor. The Philosophy of Objectivism and the Psychology of Honor. So I'm going to start off by talking to you about what is objectivism, what is the philosophy of objectivism, what are the premises. There were a series of novels written by Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead, We the Living, The Virtue of Selfishness. Very powerful novels. And what's unusual about her work was it's not only a fictional work, but it also inspired a whole philosophy called objectivism. So usually a philosopher will sit down and write a philosophy, give a treatise on it, perhaps give lectures. But this was based on a fictional novel, a number of fictional novels. And then based on that, inherent in there was a philosophy. And it was developed in terms of an explicit philosophical, political system by the early founders in terms of, well, Ayn Rand, the founder. And then after I did my master's at Columbia in 1965, before I went on to do my doctorate at the University of Texas, there were a series of lectures at a hotel in New York City, at a very nice hotel, by Nathaniel Branden and Ayn Rand. And what I remember about it is the whole room would be packed. It was just very packed. And afterwards, I would go up and I'd talk. I remember one time I went talking to Nathaniel Branden, and what struck me, I don't remember anything that was said, but I remember afterwards we went up to his room. He lived in a hotel suite. His wife was there, a maid was cleaning, we talked, and he just met me. And then he said, I have to leave on business, so he was leaving. He said, just lock the door when you leave. So he left me alone in his hotel room to just continue reading whatever I was looking at. I think he was preparing a manuscript on self-esteem. I'm not sure what he was writing at the time. I have to tell you this, that the novels were extremely inspiring. They were powerful novels. The characters in there were inspirational and made you want to be productive, inspired you to want to rise to great heights. Extremely inspirational. The concepts involved were rational self-interest and the virtue of productiveness. So within an objectivistic philosophy, the highest value is to be productive, which would be your sense of meaning. That would be your highest values, to be productive in your work, in your home life. And the antithesis was to just be a taker, a parasite on society, where you're not really producing anything, where you're just taking and expecting everybody to take care of you, support you, give you money, give you sustenance. And we have to keep in mind that Ayn Rand was from Russia. So she grew up in a communist system where the idea was from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. So she'd seen a lot of takers. So you have the people who are productive and then the others just benefiting. And then the idea that the people who produce, and she talked all about the very powerful industrialists of her age who built factories and produced steel and bridges, just made the world move. And what she saw in the world was that the producers, and to some extent this is certainly true, that the producers are the people who are doing the most to really make the world move, were also, who are normally seen as exploiters by much of society, but really were being exploited themselves. That is, people would want to then take from that person. Want to impose a tax system that would say, we want to take from you, you're not going to be able to keep the wealth that you produce, we're going to be taking this. So instead of respecting and looking up to the entrepreneurs and the industrialists, people would just look at them, sort of treating them as some kind of greedy, not exactly subhuman, but second-class greedy individuals. So instead of people saying, well, thank you that you could provide give us a job. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have a livelihood. Instead, there just be a resentment. I should be making more money. Given what I'm doing, I should be making more money with more benefits, and I deserve that. As opposed to, and there's a truth in that. A lot of times people are being underpaid and overworked. There's no question about that. Within the system of the psychology of honor that we'll be talking about, it really requires a balance. That is, where labor appreciates the capital and the industrialists and the big producers, because without them, you wouldn't have your jobs. But on the other hand, they couldn't be doing what they're doing without the worker, without the labor force. They just couldn't do it. So there needs to be the dependent, the person, the great producers who were able to make the world move, with producing cars and having factories, planes, all the medications, the ocean liners, all the rest, couldn't do it if they didn't have the people to then work in their factories and take care of what needs to be done. From a point of view, when we get to the psychology of honor, the correct response should be, and really should be included also in terms of objectivism, is a mutual appreciation and respect. But there was really an emphasis on a new hero. You know, we think of the hero as somebody who will give his life or her life for another in battle. What's a police officer, soldier, a mother or father who works day and night to take care of their kids, just spending their lives and their blood, sweat, and tears to take care of their families. That this is, and they are heroes and heroines, no question. It gave another kind of hero and heroine, which are the producers. And saying that these individuals should certainly deserve more respect than to be looked at as heroes and respected for the enormous contributions that are being made. So the appropriate response to the great industrialists and the great entrepreneurs, and listen, who creates the jobs? It's the entrepreneurs, people willing to take risks. And then within an objectivistic point of view, then people become resentful. Look, he's got it made, or she's got it made, whatever. This person's got all this money, not realizing that this individual over here couldn't have done it. This person just want to go home, have a beer, watch some TV, and kick back at the end of the day, which certainly they're entitled to do. Whereas this person was working day and night and thinking and studying and doing whatever they had to do to achieve all of this. Most people can relate to feeling, I know the application of this to most of you. I know for a fact that you feel overworked and underpaid, and there's probably truth in it. But I also know for a fact that practically nobody has sufficient gratitude to the employer, to the gratitude for the person who went and created that industry or that business that you're in. That's also true, isn't it? They don't have really sufficient appreciation and respect that you have that job, that you can put food on the table because this man or this woman made those sacrifices to create that business. So again, there needs to be that appreciation from both sides and recognizing the mutual dependency. That recognition of the mutual dependency certainly should be more emphasized in objectivism, and it's certainly a part of the psychology of honor. I'm going to talk about how that moves along. Now, within the objectivistic philosophy, individuality and freedom is heavily emphasized. And there's, by implication, you see the heroes and the heroines in the novels in the objectivistic philosophy. There's sort of the feeling that they don't need anybody. They're just self-sufficient unto themselves. That power. And most people would like to be like that. They would like to say, I'm powerful, I'm strong, I don't need anybody. I'm an island unto myself and I can make things happen. I don't need anybody. Well, that's one of the fallacies of objectivism, is that. Because if you take any of the great heroes or heroines from the novels, and you said, yes, you can go produce, and not only produce, but you could own all the skyscrapers, all the yachts, all the oceans, all the real estate's yours, and you could produce to your heart's content because you have all these facilities. Well, one catch, you'd be the only human being in the world. And not one of those heroes and heroines would take that. Nobody. No rational human being would take it. Which, by the way, is another high values within objectivism, is rationality. Nobody would accept that. Because Our productivity has meaning because of our relationships and because there are other people to share it with. So that ingredient is absent in objectivism, and in a revised objectivism, and I gave a lecture last week on a revolution in objectivism and in philosophy, and I call it the philosophy of destiny. There has to be a recognition of how desperately we need each other. That's a desperate need of one another. Not just we need each other, desperate need of each other. If we didn't desperately need each other, men would have stayed in their caves, women in their caves, and just would have gone on. And that would have been the end of the race. But there's a desperate need for one another. And objectivism is in denial of that. And so again, what I bring is a revolution not only to philosophy, but to objectivism in particular, needing to incorporate that concept. And it's certainly a part of the psychology of honor, because objectivism is based on rationality and truth. And so that truth is not being faced in the objectivist philosophy as developed by Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden. It was not dealt with. It was not dealt with. And that was a failure in the system. That truth, that reality, and objectivists, we pride ourselves on being objective, rational, dealing with facts, dealing with reality. We pride ourselves as objectivists in that philosophy. But didn't exist, partly because of the shortcomings of Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden not facing that reality that we desperately need one another. So the concept of individuality needs to be certainly modified in terms of certainly the interdependence that we have. Also within objectivism, there's a word that most people think is terrible to me. She wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. So to be selfish within objectivistic philosophy is good. That person has a right to live for their own happiness. That you have the right to live for your own happiness. And that's true. Then, of course, it comes down to what's making you happy. Many people apply that to me. I'm going to make myself happy at your expense. This is going to make me happy. What it does to you, that's your problem. I'm not doing this to make you miserable. This is just what makes me happy. I'm just going to go spend this money, or somebody says, I'm just going to sleep with this person, and it makes me happy. And this person is very upset because they're not being faithful or whatever, all of these things. I'm just going to do what makes me happy, and you have to then deal with your reality. So that kind of selfishness was a shortcoming within the objectivism as developed by Nathaniel Branden and Ayn Rand, who created the characters that really spelled out the philosophy in a very dramatic form, a very powerful form. These were made movies on Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead. They were put into movies. They were very powerful, very inspiring, and still has relevance today and always will have relevance. These are very key issues. Now, also within objectivism, it basically leans towards a laissez-faire capitalism. Each person has a contract. As long as you have consenting adults, it's good. We make a deal, we make a business deal. We sign, you're a rational adult, and you're agreeing to this arrangement, and I'm agreeing to it. We don't need the government or anybody else to intervene. And there's truth in that. You have somebody who's starving, and you can hire the person for $1 a day, and they'll sign it and say, well, because they're desperate, so they're going to work for just, not even a living wage. So the limitation of the system was that the strong exploit the weak, the rich exploit the poor, and the intelligent exploit the less intelligent. Let's take, for example, let's take a very minor situation that I'm sure many of you have seen. Somebody has a car, and it's a used car, and it's worth $10,000. But this individual doesn't know it. The wife got it, and her husband died. The car says he has no idea what was her husband's car. He has no idea what the car's worth. You, on the other end, are a car dealer. You go around buying cars, and you go see the thing, and you offer $1,000. She says, oh, I just want to get rid. Yeah, sure, thank you. And takes $1,000. Well, that's legal. That's legal. And it was two consenting adults. They signed the contract. There was an exchange of money, and off you go with a $10,000 car for $1,000. Well, it's certainly legal. And within an objectivistic philosophy, that would be the end of the story. But in terms of the psychology of honor, I would say there's no honor in that. You're just taking care of somebody's ignorance. You're taking advantage of somebody's ignorance. Well, let's say on top of that, that woman was not only ignorant, but let's say she was borderline retarded. So here somebody comes in, a very bright person, very knowledgeable, comes in and says, you know, I'll give you $100. Let's take that off your hand. Oh, okay. And the person signs it. So it's $100 now, a car worth $10,000. And then he tells his friends what he paid for it. He says, oh, you got to steal. You stole that. Oh, good going. And then, so then, but it's all legal and it's contractual. It's one adult dealing with another adult. Just happens to be one is above average intelligence and the other is below average intelligence. One is ignorant about the value and one has knowledge. So really you're not dealing in a system where it's a ground zero, an even playing field. And so that was, again, another shortcoming within the objectivistic philosophy. It needed to incorporate really the concept of honor. There's no honor in taking advantage or exploiting another individual. Certainly, in America, it's your right. The person sold it. It's legal. Nobody can do anything to prosecute you. If the person was over 18, the deal stands. The deal will stand. But in terms of the psychology of honor, we're going to be talking about that. That would not be honorable, and it would be incumbent upon the person to say, look, it's worth $10,000, and I need to make a profit. I'll give you $7, that gives me, and I've got to advertise, I'll make $3 on it. Then now you're talking about something fair. It's worth $10, but I have to make a profit. I'll give you $7,000 for that car, even though you could have gotten it for $100 because the person's borderline retarded and doesn't understand what the car is, doesn't even understand the value. So that would then be a more honorable situation. That distinction is not made within the kind of laissez-faire capitalism that's advocated within objectivistic philosophy, and that needs to be, honor needs to be brought into, it really needs to be capitalism with honor. There's certainly no honor in paying somebody a non-living wage. I mean, if you're making a lot of money and you're paying somebody, you know, just minimum wage and they can't live on it, there's no honor in that. Now, if you're not making any profit, or you're not making that much profit, that's understandable. But let's say you're making millions of dollars, you're making huge amounts of money, and you're paying somebody that kind of wage. And the people take it. The guy says, well, I've got to take this job because I have nowhere to go. I didn't graduate, I didn't graduate high school. So the person has to take 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and it's legal. They're meeting the minimum wage. And so within objectivistic philosophy, that would be considered satisfactory. But really it needs to be modified into incorporating honor. Now, I'm not saying a matter of honor involves the government mandating that you pay a living wage. I'm not making any political implications. I'm just saying the entrepreneur, the business person, the industrialist needs to incorporate honor into that capitalism. We're talking a voluntary system. One person says, you know what, I want to make sure you're getting a living wage. It's an educational process. And that, of course, will enhance productivity. It'll enhance the morale. It'll cut down theft and absenteeism, and it'll reduce litigation. It's really, in the long run, it is rational self-interest, enlightened self-interest. In the long run, the owner will benefit. But they need to see it in that. So that would be the extension of rational self-interest, which is highly prized within objectivism, but not really specified to the extent that I'm doing right now, and that needs to be more spelled out within the system. Now we're talking about also freedom, which is highly prized within the objectivistic philosophy, to be free. And of course, Ayn Rand naturally would certainly put that at the top of the list. She came from a communist USSR. And so, I mean, certainly we value that in terms of as Americans. Now, we need to look at, I mean, some people look at freedom to be free to do anything you want to do as long as it's legal, free to do what you want to do. And certainly politically that should not be curtailed. A person should have that freedom. Well, let's say you have somebody, he's got a tobacco farms and he's selling cigarettes, and he should be free to be able to sell those cigarettes. If you buy that cigarette, you're an adult. You're paying $5 for the pack. That's the price. That's the going price, and you put that money there, and then you're smoking your cigarettes. And that would be that freedom to do that, which is what capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, would entail. Free to do this. Now, if the person, they're free to do it, but you're killing the person for money. I mean, you're selling the person the cigarettes. The date is incontrovertible. I mean, it's incontrovertible. I mean, we know that it's going to shorten a person's life. It's going to cause a cancer. It's going to cause a myriad of diseases. We know that. So again, she needed to include freedom with honor. Because the freedom itself is then the freedom to kill people legally. Putting ads on TV for Twinkies, and the kids say, oh, Mommy, I want those Twinkies. And the kids are coming down with diabetes at early ages. And certainly they're right to advertise that. And certainly with an objectivistic system, that would be her right. This person is a tremendous industrialist, developed all these huge factories, really worked out the systems, has the way of the machinery, the mass production, the wrapping, the packaging, the distribution. That shows tremendous, that would be a person of enormous productivity. But it's productivity without honor. So really the honor aspect had to be introduced more into objectivism. There's no honor in selling somebody cigarettes. There's no honor in selling somebody Twinkies. No honor in selling somebody food just so saturated with sodium that it could just send somebody who's sodium sensitive, just send up their blood pressure. What honor is in that? So it really needs to be capitalism with honor, freedom with honor, individualism in the context of desperately needing each other, of interdependence, which is reality. These are the aspects then that are developed within the psychology of honor that I'm going to be talking about. Now, also, an extension of this selfishness, Ayn Rand was a very fierce atheist. So within objectivism, there's really no place for what we might call a spiritual identity, no place for talking about God, and then certainly by extension, no place of talking about the divine teachers who brought the Word of God. That would be, but she came at a time, and most of you aren't old enough to know this, when most of the intellectuals and the educated people in this country, and probably in many industrialized nations, was atheist. I mean, it was almost like an embarrassment. I mean, you believe in God? What are you, stupid? I mean, it's all science. We can explain everything through, mechanical explanations, biophysiological, chemical explanations. I mean, and the Big Bang and so forth, all of which is true, and evolution, all of which is true. Certainly for objectivism to be able to reach out, particularly if it wants to reach the Latino community, there needs to at least be the option of integrity and a respect for believers. Otherwise, I mean, if objectivists want to be able to reach the Latino community, it's just not going to happen without some kind of spiritual concept. It's just not going to be there. And it wasn't there with Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden. It wasn't there. In fact, it was almost like God and religion was seen as a con. In other words, it's a way of making you feel guilty for not doing more for me. In other words, you owe me because God would want you to do this, and therefore, even though you're working day and night, you owe me a livelihood. I have a right to get a nice car also, and a house, and the good things of this life, and even though I don't work. Now, certainly within objectivist philosophy, if somebody's really truly disabled, there's something, the idea that there should be some way of making a contribution, and that's true. Certainly you don't want to have people, it's not good for them, it's not good for society to have people who are just sitting around non-productive. Absolutely true. There's so much truth within objectivism, absolutely true. And you do have people exploiting the system. I mean, a lot of people exploiting the system. And it's not only not honorable, it's not good for the person doing it. Each person really should seek to add value and productiveness in this world. However, whatever form and however it could be done. There's certainly a big difference between somebody standing on a corner begging for money versus that person standing somewhere else selling oranges on the corner or selling flowers on the corner. I mean, one person is a merchant and the other is a beggar. That could be a merchant. The person should certainly elevate themselves to being a merchant doing something. Certainly a person is a big difference between somebody just having a cup out asking for money and somebody saying, you know, having a shoe polishing, well, I'll polish your shoes and I'll do a good job. I'll get a good shine on your shoes. I'm going to do this for the money, just being whatever corner they're on. There's a big difference. Now, there are some people that really literally can't do anything, but not many. And so within objectivism, there's really an encouragement to find dignity in it. There's no dignity on just doing nothing and exploiting others who are. There's no dignity within objectivism, and actually in any system, but we're talking about objectivism, of just taking and not giving. So then when you end up with generations of children, particularly in America, where there is the sense of the world owes me. That's a common dimension that you see, the world owes me. Well, within objectivism, the world doesn't owe you anything. I mean, your parents were there. I mean, when you're an infant and you're 2 months old, you're 3 months old, within objectivism, no one expects you to go out and build a new car or go out and start a new factory. Nobody expects that. I mean, each of us began life as a beggar. I began life as a beggar, and you began life as a beggar. Ayn Rand began life as a beggar. Nathaniel Branden began life as a beggar. We were totally unequipped to survive or to give anything. We were just like that. I mean, nobody realized what they weren't taking in what it means to be human. Tremendous, rapidly learning, but not really giving out anything. Just, dirtying the diaper, defecating, urinating, and they can be changed, eating, time to feed, keeping the mother up all night, the father up all night. I mean, the child, each of you, and Nathaniel Branden, and Ayn Rand, myself and you, each of us was a terrible burden, definitely upon our mothers, and probably on our fathers, and possibly on our siblings. And we weren't contributing anything. 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, still not doing anything. Nothing. A year, still not doing anything. 2 years, still not doing anything. 3 years, taker, exploiter, exploiting your parents. I mean, what? What are you giving? 3 years. Now, in some cultures, 5 and 6, because they could start doing something. And it's probably good for a 6-year-old or 7-year-old to be useful. Otherwise, they become like a pet. And in this country, a lot of these kids are pets. They don't do anything. There are other cultures where at 6, 7 years old, they're out in the farm, they're helping mom and dad, do something out there. Or if there's some other nation, where it's poor, they're helping the family do something. And you know what? The child feels good about that. In this country, child 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the idea is, no, let him be a kid. He's only a kid once in a while. Let him be a kid. Doesn't have to do anything. In this country, human beings tend to be non-productive tend to be non-productive at 10, 12, 14, 15, and what are they doing? Nothing. So most children in this country are beggars. Just coming up, exploiting the system, not giving anything. There's no honor in that for the child. There's certainly no honor in the parenting. Let them be like that. But it's a society of enabling this to happen. 14, 15. I mean, maybe they're studying, they're doing that, and that's good. So they're preparing for their future. But in terms of really producing, in the sense of doing something for you, or doing something for the society, adding value to society, no. 17, 18, 19. Maybe some are starting to do something. So you have a nation of beggars for how many years? A long time. A long time. And of course, then you have the child labor laws. I mean, if a kid goes out and gets a job, you hire somebody, and he's 10 years old, well, you have child labor. I mean, you can't even get a job. So the society itself is keeping him. Well, you're going to stay a beggar. You're going to beg from your parents, let your parents feed you, give you sustenance, take care of your medical things. We're not even going to let you do something productive in a societal sense at 10 years old, 11 years old, 12. I think you have to be, 16 to get a card to work. So at 15, you can't even get a job. You're not even allowed to do it. So it's illegal to do it and to hire somebody. So the system now, and I'm sure Nathaniel Branden and Ayn Rand, who are just brilliant. I can't even tell you how brilliant both are, and Nathaniel Branden as well. I'm sure they were beggars up to, at least 5, 6, 7. She was in Russia, so maybe she had to do something early in life. He's an American. Maybe he didn't do anything till, 16? I don't even know at what age he started really contributing. He was a beggar himself. I've been a beggar. My parents took care of me, and my father, even when I wanted to work, no, you got all your life to work. Enjoy life. So there's that attitude. Now, so these concepts, certainly within objectivism, are not addressed. It's a nation of beggars. It's a world of beggars, a world of people exploiting others. Certainly the children. You can see these kids are exploiting their parents. That kid's 10 years old, and I'll take care of his rent. He's exploiting his mother, exploiting his father, and maybe exploiting his grandparents if they live there. He's exploiting. So you could say they're all on welfare. Not from the government, they're on welfare from their parents or from whoever is supporting them at an orphanage. Let's say they're at an orphanage. The orphanage is exploiting. So they really need to modify the concept, but certainly the idea that we need to be productive. And there's more honor. I mean, I think most of us have a respect. If you hear stories, like my father worked since he was 12, never finished high school, worked since he was 12 years old, helped support his mother, and became a millionaire, became very wealthy in life, never graduated high school. And we hear those stories, and we see those stories from immigrants from other countries, from Mexico, from all various nations that come here, work hard, and get to have and early ages, in the fields, picking strawberries, picking whatever, at 7 years old, 8 years old. Certainly we know that children could be productive and adding something, and not just charity cases in terms of their parents, giving them charity. But the idea of being productive, so there is the virtue of productiveness, and it's a very valid concept. It just needs to be extended then to younger ages. Certainly being a student, the child should focus on their studies, but the idea of overly spoiling the person, there's no honor, that's not even an honorable parenting, but it's a societal norm. So that needs to be addressed. So in addition to making a comparison, so I'm now going to go into the psychology of honor. Well, let me say another aspect of objectivism that I haven't seen really spelled out, but I'll tell you what I see. And it's a very powerful factor. The heroes and heroines in the novels don't waste their time on trivial conversation. Their lives are filled with meaning. Their conversations are very meaningful. So the idea, and certainly within the psychology of honor, you're going to see the same, because it's a squandering of words. Most people are squandering not only their lives, but squandering their words. One of the greatest natural resource that we have are our words. In a lifetime, we probably speak trillions of words over a lifetime. And people are wasting it on just things that don't matter. I mean, certainly a certain amount of superficial conversation is fine. But we interviewed 1,800 people at the Nerenberg Institute, and we found that most people would like to have more meaningful conversation than they're having. It's causing them to be lonely that there's so much superficial conversation. There's probably in America, at least, is 95% of the time superficial and 5% deep. Most people would like 50% deep and 50% superficial. And the old social contract that we inherited coming into this country and into this world here is 95% of the time in America, the conversation will be superficial, 5% deep. And then there's a lock-in. Once you get into a superficial conversation, you can't get out of it. You just got to leave if you want to get away from it. And only certain subjects are socially appropriate. So what we found is that the people want a new social contract where at least 50% of the time is superficial and 50% of the time deep, which has never existed before. And no lock-in. You can go superficial, deep, be fluid. And also then any conversation would be appropriate as long as the person talking would do it in a respectfully real manner, that is with kindness, wisdom, and respect to boundaries. So this mode of communication is part of the psychology of honor that I'm going to go into. So within psychology of honor, the basic premise is you have the right to be who you really are. You have the right to be who you really are, as long as the expression of your true self is in a respectfully real manner. Within objectivism, that same premise is that you have the right to be who you really are. But the concept within objectivism is who you really are is really this very selfish, self-serving person. And so you have the right to be that selfish, self-serving person. I would say the concept within objectivism is that we are deep down, that our basic identity is we are selfish, self-serving people with a right to be happy. And the only way to be happy is to serve that selfishness and self-centeredness. That is our right, and it certainly is our right, and that's our identity. Now, that's a faulty concept of identity. It's an erroneous concept. Actually, we have a lower nature, an animal nature, no different than a chimpanzee, a bull, a cow. We have that animal nature, no doubt about it. But we also have a higher nature. Now, if you could say, you want to put a religious system, you could say divine nature, or if you don't want to go into a religious system, you have a higher nature, a nature that can control the animal nature, to control that. And so that self-control and then living up to the virtue, which is, we have two purposes in life within the psychology of honor model, which is the development of virtue, such as keeping our word, loyalty, service to self, family, community, and for those who believe in God, service to God. We certainly have that right to then manifest that virtue, and also the virtue of compassion and love, to then have to be able to express that, and this is part of our purpose. The other purpose in life within the psychology of honor model is to add to an ever-advancing civilization, add value to the world. And so within, the happiness is then seen within the psychology of honor as adding value to the world and developing our own virtue. Now you look at a bull, this is a cow experiment. A bull, if you bring a cow in heat, he will mount her. That's in the genetics. You bring that same cow the next day, he won't mount her. You bring a fresh cow in heat, he will mount her. Because from an evolutionary point of view, to spread the seed enhances the probability of the continuation of his seed by spreading it around. And men have the same dynamic. It's certainly in men the same way. Now, men don't necessarily like women to know that, but that's true. But a man has the power and the discipline to overcome that and to manage his own or her own, his own sexuality, and a woman to manage her sexuality. We have the power to do that. A person says, well, I like having sex with as many people as I want. If it's consenting partners, I have the right to do it. Yes, you do. It's not breaking the law. So I would say with an objectivistic philosophy, it would be seen as not a problem. It's making that person happy. It's consenting individuals. I'm not even sure with an objectivism, if the people were married sleeping around, I'm not even sure they would be seen as wrong because it's consenting individuals. I wasn't even clear that that would be problematic. Consenting individuals makes them happy, or they think it's making them happy, it feels good to them, and they do it. So certainly, if somebody's married, there's no honor in then being unfaithful and being with other people. So again, we see the need for honor to enter into that. There's no honor in just manifesting that lower nature. So the very foundation that we are basically selfish, self-centered people seeking to satisfy our needs and our pleasures, and we certainly have the right. And there's certainly a great deal of pleasure with an objectivism and being productive and making plans and thinking in the process and then seeing the results. That's a very high level. So as we add honor into the equation, it's basically a revolution in the objectivistic philosophy. Now, also the psychology of honor, which I presented also as a philosophical system. So right now I've talked about the disciples of honor, which is the foundation of the psychology of honor in terms of psychology, medicine, and philosophy. Last week was the first time I extended it into philosophy when I called it philosophy of destiny and revolution in philosophy and in objectivism. So the foundation of psychology of honor is the power of volition. And volition is extremely important in objectivism, that we have volition, we have free will. Very important in objectivism, our power of volition. So in psychology, but in the psychology of honor, this is how it goes. I'm going to demonstrate your own power of volition. I'm going to demonstrate to you an enormous power that you have that you take for granted. Now that you have it, your children have it. At age 6, it's there. Before that, it's there to some extent, but we're the only species that have this power of volition. And I'm going to demonstrate it to you right now within your own psyche. Every one of you, without exception, will see your own power. Are you ready to see this tremendous power you have that's unique to us as a species? It's this. Right now, have a pleasant memory. Something from today that happened. It could be somebody you saw that you loved. It could be something you ate that you enjoyed. Take a moment and have that thought. All of you did it immediately. You did it naturally, rapidly, effortlessly, every one of you. If you told a 6-year-old to do it, a 6-year-old could do that. Absolutely. And I know every one of you did it. And look what happened. When I asked you to do it, before I asked you to do that, you weren't thinking about that memory. I know you weren't. It came out of nowhere, boom. And now that I'm talking to you, it's gone. It disappeared. It's gone. So that showed that dimension of the power. Number 2, you chose the polarity. It was a pleasant memory. It was a positive memory. So you were able to choose the polarity of your own thought. No other species can do that. And you chose the time dimension. It wasn't the future. It wasn't the present. It was the past. You chose a memory. Just like that. Bam. It was right there. This is your power of volition. Now, let's take it a step further. Have the thought, I wish you well, and have the thought 3 times. Think that thought to yourself 3 times right now. I don't need a show of hands whether you did it. I know you did it. Again, rapidly, naturally, effortlessly. This is an enormous power. You're so powerful. You're more powerful than you ever knew. This is the foundation of the psychology of honor. It's the foundation of the philosophy of honor. And volition is at the foundation of the philosophy of objectivism, but I've demonstrated in a unique way that hasn't been specified within that philosophy, but now that can be used within objectivism as well as a demonstration of the power. So I'm adding this to the whole approach to objectivism. Once you can demonstrate so rapidly this enormous power, where you can actually choose your thoughts. You're able to choose your thought. Now that's the foundation for the psychology of honor. So the psychology of honor is, we have basically the disciples of honor who commit to repeating for a lifetime the 4 commandments of honor. And the 4 commandments of honor are these. I seek always to serve my highest values. Or if a person believes in God, they can say, God, your wish is my only wish. Or if a person, now an extension of I seek always to serve my highest values, they can take this one instead of that. I choose honor above all else. So a person takes either I seek always to serve my highest values, I choose honor above all else, or God, your wish is my only wish. That's the first commandment, one of those 3. And the second is, I wish you well. And the third is, I take full responsibility for co-creating my reality and my problems. And certainly within objectivism, taking responsibility for our lives is key. And seeking to serve our highest values is key. Being a well-wisher is not. And the fourth is consistent with objectivism, but it's certainly a part of being a disciple of honor. I am grateful for the power I gain from hardship. I am grateful for the power I gain from hardship. So we go through hardships in life, but we see that it leads to us getting stronger. We gain wisdom, compassion, strength from the hardships that we have. So those people who want to become disciples of honor, so then there's the pledge. And a person who takes the pledge is agreeing to repeat the 4 commandments of honor 3 times a day for the rest of your life. So, most of you here are amenable to this, so I want to ask you to raise your right hand. Those who want to take the pledge, raise your right hand. As a disciple of honor, I pledge myself for all the days of my life to the 4 commandments of honor. And I'll teach them to those I love. I'll repeat them every morning, afternoon, and evening. And I'll listen to myself recite them. Welcome to the brotherhood. Welcome to the sisterhood. This is the foundation for the psychology of honor, foundation for the philosophy of honor that I presented last week. Very overlapping system. The whole aspect of psychology of honor and the philosophy of honor is that it affects your every thought, word, and action. It's not just a philosophical or psychological system that's lectured upon or you read about. It affects all your thoughts. And as you repeat these thoughts 3 times a day, you don't necessarily get a good feeling when you repeat them, but it actually speaks to your own psyche, to your own perspective, and even to your own physiology, because your epigenes that are on the cell of all your cell membranes are in constant communication with your genes, causing certain genes to express themselves, certain ones to be suppressed, and to maximize the constructive expression and maximize the suppression of dangerous genes. You want to have a good, positive communication to your own epigenes, which will operate and maximize the constructiveness of your genetic expression. So the whole physiological mechanism, partly it works through carbon methylation, which then attaches to the, it's a protein that will then attach itself to the chromosomes, turning them on or off. So both in terms of keeping perspective, and you're actually, when you're saying these, you're speaking to your own physiology. So within the psychology of honor, and certainly within objectivism, it all has to be built on fact, on rationality, on reason. And this is all factual. I'm showing you volition in a very factual, concrete way. I couldn't have shown it in a more concrete way than I did, where you demonstrated you could choose the polarity of your thought, and you could choose the time dimension of your thought. Now, in addition to the 4 commandments of honor, there are 25 laws of honor. I'm just going to read a few of them just to give you an idea of them. I refuse to react to your negativity. I will only respond to your vulnerability. I refuse to react to your negativity. I will only respond to your vulnerability. So in terms of reality and fact, I'm going to tell you a fact. I'm going to tell you a reality. Beneath everybody's negativity, whether they're angry, rage, jealousy, aloofness, and getting distant from you, beneath it all, fact, reality, they're vulnerable. they feel abandoned, neglected, hurt, inferior, overwhelmed, humiliated. Always, that's a fact. That's what's beneath all these expressions. So certainly within objectivism, there would need to be recognition of that reality, that fact. Underneath all negative expression is always vulnerability. So when a person, so this is where then the law of honor comes in, because many objectivists, like most human beings, lie to themselves. They get angry, which is a cover-up. That's not the reality. You really feel hurt. So a person says, well, I'm going to be real with you, bro. I hate you. I think you're stupid. I never liked you. I don't want to see you again. It's being real. Somebody would say, well, that's a strong guy. He speaks his mind. Look at that. He speaks his mind. Isn't he something? Give me a break. The guy's just covering up. What he should have been saying is something like this. Hey, when you did what you did, it hurt me. It hurt my feelings. If you could apologize, I'd be grateful. Now, that's strength, and that's based on reality. If you hurt my feelings, if you could find it in your heart to apologize, I'd be grateful. Now, I know that practically none of you do that. And certainly objectivists are not going to be, haven't done it either. So I would say objectivists, like almost everybody else, you lie to yourself. When you're getting angry and you're covering up, you're lying to yourself. You're covering up. So I accuse all of you of being liars. I know what that's like. I've done it myself. I don't do it much anymore. No, I don't. See, the idea of strength that then got caught. You see, you look at the heroes within objectivism. They would never say, I feel hurt. You hurt my feelings. No, no. They're too strong for that. Well, they're not that too strong for that. Oh, I feel jealous or I feel humiliated. They would never say that. In fact, the heroes in any of the movies you see, John Wayne never would have said it. Clint Eastwood never would say it. No. They'd come out swinging or shooting. So objectivism incorporated that concept of strength, which is a false concept. It's not real. It's a scam. It's a lie. So let's get real, but let's get respectfully real. So I'm bringing that to objectivism. Certainly another one of the laws of honor, these are thoughts that can be repeated but not necessarily memorized like you need to do with the 4 commandments of honor. I love you, or all things work for good for those who seek the good. I rise to the struggle always. Certainly within objectivism, that would be highly admired. Arising to the struggle, not backing down from it. Goes on with 25 of these laws of honor, but I'm getting the sign to stop, so we'll go into these on one of the other lectures. It's been my privilege to present to you the philosophy of objectivism and the psychology of honor. It's the second lecture in this series related to philosophy. We've taken this whole concept of honor and disciples of honor into psychology, medicine, where these thoughts are actually medicines, have medical implications, and now into philosophy. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present this to you. Thank you.